I scaled 4 businesses to 100 grand a month, all within 30 days. A sales coaching company, sales certification, a medical clinic, and also my sales recruiting company. So in this video, I'm going to take all of that experience, as well as my experience working with over 3,000 plus clients in the past several years, and really boil it down into a blueprint that anybody can follow, not just to get to 100 grand a month as soon as possible in their business, but also even $3 to $5 million a year, if not more. And it all begins with phase 1, which is validation. So that begins with a very simple question of what business should you actually start? So if this is your very first business that you're doing, I would start an online service-based business. We'll talk about why in a second, but these are businesses like recruiting, agency services, managed business services, so like fractional CFO, CMO, sales director, stuff like that, coaching and consulting where you're leveraging specialized knowledge to solve a problem for a business or a consumer, professional tax services or IT services, asset protection, IT and cybersecurity. Really, it's anything where the product is the labor that follows systems and processes, okay? So why would I do this? Well, it's very little barrier to entry because it's a low startup cost. So instead of something like SaaS, where you might spend a year or 2 years investing to develop a product, you don't have any of that at all with a consulting or online service-based business. There's no brick and mortar location like you'd have in a local business, and there's no inventory like you'd have in an e-commerce business. Now, on top of that, there's fast iterations on your product or offer. So for instance, in SaaS, if you have to really pivot your product and iterate it, that could take 2-3 months, maybe 6 months sometimes, or even restarting over from scratch. In consulting, you could do that in 7 days. Or in agency service, you could flip things around in like 7 days. So you have much faster iterations, which if you're a beginner, you need because you might not know what you're doing. It also allows you flexible scaling because you can just start with you. You don't need a big founding team or to raise money or any of that stuff. And then as you grow and acquire more skills, your team can grow, right? So if we know that this is what we want to do right now is start an online service-based business, especially if it's the first thing we're doing, the question becomes, what service do you actually start? So I use this matrix here to explain this. You really want the intersection between 3 things: industries that you're passionate about, problems you can solve, and skills you can learn and require. Inside of that is what your offer should be. So I'm going to break down some examples in a second, but a few kind of tips for this is the more insider you are to a market, the better. So for instance, if you're a consultant and you've spent 5 years really learning a specialized skill in a company, oftentimes you can now take that specialized skill that you learned as a full-time W-2 employee and start a consulting business helping other people around that. You see that all the time. Like there's somebody right now who had a tremendous amount of experience running HR at Google. They launched a book and then started getting big corporate contracts, helping implement some of the same systems and learning lessons that they did at Google, right? So you see this all the time in the corporate consulting world, right? Another thing I would think about is what skill are you open to spending 10,000 plus hours honing? Okay, so like for instance with me, I started a sales recruiting business, sales training business, something like that. I already had spent thousands of hours honing that skill and I loved it. So the idea of just spending more time just becoming absolutely great at that was something that I loved. And also keep in mind, the more skilled you are at solving a certain problem, the more passionate about it that you become. So for instance, nobody when they were, 12 years old, for instance, woke up and was like, Mom and Dad, when I grow up, I want to be a salesperson, right? Like nobody said that ever. But, when I got into sales, I did it really for a means to an end. I wanted to do it to kind of bridge the gap to my next business. But the more I kind of got deeper into it and became more skilled at it, I started to all of a sudden become passionate about it. And so that's what happens. Like the more skilled you become at solving a certain problem, you actually gain passion. So keep in mind, sometimes you might not be that passionate about what you're doing at first, but as you get better at it, you find the passion through it, okay? So I'll give you some examples. So for me, the skill I had was sales and sales teams. So before I started my business, I was good at sales and sales teams because of my prior work experience. The skills I had to acquire was sales recruiting done for you. We didn't know how to do that at the time. The problem I was solving is sales performance and sales recruiting for companies. And the industry that I was doing it in was the info coaching agency industry. So for instance, not right now, we do that much broader. Like we can work with pretty much any company who needs sales reps. But in the beginning, that was the market I knew really well. So that's kind of how I created my offer out of those 3 things. Now, a client of mine, for instance, their skill was digital marketing and specifically CRO, conversion rate optimization. The problem they were solving is companies losing money due to poor conversion rates, okay? So like e-commerce companies, for instance, who have a sales page or a website, they have a lot of traffic coming to it, and they're obviously losing money because the page isn't optimized the right way. And then the industry was obviously D2C, e-commerce companies above $1 million. So all the intersection of that, in the center, you have the offer. Now, a few other tips I would think about if I was you: what market can you provide the most value to? That's the first question you should ask. Whatever you can provide the most value to, to is likely going to be one of the best things you should go after. Is the market actually growing? If it's a neutral growth, that can be okay. You want to avoid a shrinking growth. Is there a clear problem in this market? Are they easy to find or target, whether that's through direct outreach, ads, or et cetera? Do they have purchasing power? So for instance, anything where somebody actually has money, especially, is going to be better than obviously if you're going after pure broke people. Not that say that you can't build a huge business off broke people, but in general, it's much easier to have a higher LTV, have higher retention, work with customers longer if they actually have purchasing power. The other thing is TAM above 30K. So for instance, that's about the threshold. About 20 to 30K TAM is the minimum threshold you kind of need to run a good paid advertising approach. So if you have that, it's not required, but if you have that, it does make it a lot easier. And the other thing I'll say too is don't be afraid to just kind of model what works. Like if this is your first business ever, you can just look out there to the industries that you're passionate about and just find business models where you're like, man, I would just love to have a business like that, and really just model it and try to do a few different things unique or different. And you can get to several million a year just through that. Are you going to have a massive breakthrough 9-figure success? No, you might need to innovate to eventually get there. But man, if this is your first business, like you can literally just model what works. Maybe it's a copywriting agency, and no problem. If you just get really good at that, you're going to be able to make money and get to multiple 7 figures a year, no problem. Okay. So a lot of people just overthink it. They think they need to find something crazy new, crazy different. You don't need to do that. So next, we want to look at how to actually package your message and offer. So now that we know what your offer is, how do you actually put that all together? So this is the framework I look through that from. The first thing we want to do is make sure the packaging is right. So this is not necessarily what the offer is, but how the offer is being communicated to the marketplace that's unique, different, superior than everybody else. So the way we like to teach clients about this is a 3S formula. You want a specific problem, a specific person, and a specific way. Okay, we'll walk through an example of that in a second. But if you don't have that messaging totally dialed, it's very hard to get any sort of acquisition to work. Okay. And it's also very hard to get premium pricing. So for instance, like if you're a specialist, you can charge more than a generalist. Like the brain surgeon makes more than the family doctor. Okay. So this is important for number one, standing out so you can get cold acquisition to work. And number two, commanding a premium pricing as a specialist, which leads us to economics, which is the second thing. So you want to have pricing that, again, is premium enough to where in the beginning, especially in an online service-based business, you can get 70 to 80% profit margins, okay? So this gives you enough room to where as you start scaling, you have enough wiggle room and margins to be able to hire staff under you and really create a business and not a job. What a lot of people do is they do everything to everybody. They don't charge premium pricing, so they might get to 40 to 50 grand a month, but then their margins are so small because their complexity and their fulfillment's all over the place. They don't charge premium pricing, and they don't have the excess cash flow to hire a team. So they end up with a glorified job and not a business, okay? The third thing is scalability. So kind of similar to economics, we want to make sure whatever we pick, as we get dialed into that, we have a fulfillment system to where we know this is a repeatable, scalable process to get to 100 to 300 grand a month. Okay. So if you can't take on enough clients to pass a simple 7 figures, the model must change. Now, if the model is good enough, usually in an online service-based business, at least to get to 100 to 300 grand a month, usually you could repeat and scale the model and scale the labor out of the model to even get to 8 figures. Okay. Now let's kind of look at how this all comes together. If you have packaging and scalability, but you don't have economics, you're going to have weak margins and an inability to hire. If you have the packaging and economics, but not the scalability, you have constant fulfillment bottlenecks. And then if you have good economics and good scalability, but your packaging and messaging is off, then your cold acquisition isn't going to work. So you need all three to really get the right validation. So let's walk through some examples. Here is the most classic example of bad packaging, okay? And that's the everything to everybody full service marketing agency, the good old one-stop shop. Now, I do want to have a caveat, like these can work in the Fortune 500, 1000 if you're doing big corporate contracts. So somebody like Neil Patel, he does great with this. But the average agency owner, for instance, who's doing small business, it just doesn't work as well. So here's kind of the problems if you walk it through this framework. The packaging is off because you're doing everything to everybody, so you're doing nobody to anybody, or nothing to anybody. And you don't have a specific person, a specific pain point, and you can't make cold acquisition work. This is why all of those types of companies, when they come to us, they're always stuck on word-of-mouth referrals. The next thing is economics. So if there's no specialization, you can't charge premium pricing. If you can't charge premium pricing, you have smaller margins. If you have smaller margins, you don't have enough margin to hire a team. And that means ultimately you don't have a business, you have a job. okay? Because you can't hire a team, you're doing everything yourself. And then you don't have the scalability because since you're everything to everybody, all the clients have varied client journeys. And because there's no standardization in the client journey, you have much more higher labor costs and you're doing a lot of outsourcing, which again, crushes your margins and also gets your clients worse results. And then to actually make this even worse, because you have such a you're doing everything to everybody, it not only makes your fulfillment all over the place with all these varied client journeys, but your sales process is all over the place with varied client journeys. The antithesis of this and what you really want is like a conveyor belt where we're solving the same problem for the same person the same way every single time, both in the sales and diagnosing and prescribing process on the front end and in the fulfillment. That's what's really going to not only drive up actually the premium of your price, but also keep the operational complexity down, okay? So here's a good example. Let's take an agency again, but it's a CRO agency for e-commerce. The specific problem is low conversion rate on checkout pages. The specific person is e-commerce companies doing over $1 million a year. The specific methodology or way is whatever your method is of solving that problem, right? Whatever your kind of unique sauce is within your CRO. Your economics is, okay, well, you have more specialization, so you can charge more, you get better margins, you have better margins, you hire more team. So you have a business, not a job. The scalability is now all the clients coming in have the same problem, so it's easier to standardize sales and it's easier to standardize fulfillment. So again, imagine you're a salesperson. If every single one of these people who comes on a call with you is coming in and they're coming in from the same funnel, they have the same problem, and then they're in the same industry, in the same type of business, it's way easier to get in a good groove selling those people than it's just all over the place. And same goes for fulfillment. We can create like a very packaged, productized fulfillment process. That limits complexity and makes it easier to scale, okay? Now we move on to pricing. So we figured out what our offer is, figured out how to package and message the offer, how to have the right economics and scalability. So how do we come up with a price? The easiest thing to do is look at the competition, all right? Look at what's their price points versus what value they're providing. And then also look at what's your value and what's 1/10 of that number, okay? So with those in mind, the kind of rule of thumb is in the beginning, all right, err on underpricing and providing more value with the intention of going premium later and stair-stepping up the price. What this is going to do is create the flow and add friction, as Hormozi would say. It kind of greases the wheel. And so then you slowly increase price as the metrics, which I'll show you in a second, look pretty good. And you slowly remove deliverables that through client feedback don't seem as important, okay? So another rule of thumb, in an online service-based business, start with a 90-day value at least of $3K or more. That's about as minimum as I would go. All right, so use kind of those other frameworks. Also think about this. You need it to be about $3,000 or more minimum, okay? Now, increase price if your day one cash collected, so how much cash you collect from the client day one, is above 40%. If your AR is above 80%, your accounts receivables, how much you collect from the client with the payment plans, that's got to be above 80%. And if your close rate is above 20 to 25%, hike the price anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 and then see how those metrics hold. Okay. Those are the things, if I see all of those looking good, definitely needs a price increase. Even if I see a decent closing rate and just good upfront cash, I'm still going to look at increasing the price. Okay. But those are the metrics that if I see those, the market is telling me that we need to increase the price. Hopefully that makes sense. So let's move on to developing an optimal selling system, which is phase 2. So we got the offer out of the way. Now let's talk about the optimal selling system. So what is that? So the outcome here in phase 2 is to find a consistent, repeatable, predictable way to generate new business revenue. Okay, that sounds super obvious, but even a lot of businesses are doing $2, $3, $4 million a year, still haven't managed to figure this out. Okay, and a lot of other bigger businesses could do this a lot better. Now, if you nail phase 1 and you nail this, I'm not kidding, hitting 100 to 500 grand a month is actually pretty easy. And honestly, you can nail these 2 phases. The next thing you would have to figure out is team. But if you have a good, if you can do team, and you know how to hire, train, manage leaders, etc., and you get these first 2 phases, you could even go all the way to 8 figures, okay? So there's 2 parts to an optimal selling system. There's a consistent, repeatable way to generate interest, aka leads, and then a consistent, repeatable way to convert that interest into sales, right? So it's like you want a really good inputs-outputs system that generates the interest, and then same thing with converting the interest into conversions or into sales, okay? But the key word is here, system, all right? It must be a system. A system is where you can put in some inputs, like you can pull the lever and put inputs in, and then, okay, we got outputs out, right? If you see on the bottom, it says we want inputs is the signal, interest, conversion mechanism. The outputs is the sales. So it has to be a system. I'm going to give you multiple examples. First, let's talk about What is not an optimal selling system? I'm going to pick on, again, the full service marketing agency, okay? So a lot of times a full service marketing agency, they might even be doing 100 to 200 grand a month. But then the problem is it's all through word of mouth referrals, trade shows, networking, inconsistent organic. Like, they're kind of like, yeah, we do like a lot of different stuff and we kind of get business. But I'm like, is there anything where you can pull the lever and get new clients coming in at will? No. All right. That's not an optimal selling system. So even if they're doing $1 million, $2 million a year, when they don't have this system, it's still going to be the bottleneck for that next level of growth in the business. So with that said, what does a good optimal selling system actually look like? Well, before I get into that, I just want to remind you, there's a link below in the description. If you need help with developing the right optimal selling system, or even placing setters or closers in your business, or getting the sales training up, or actually really building a high-performing sales team, or even just general consulting on how to get to 7 or 8 figures in your business, there's a call below to book with my team to talk about how we can help. So if that interests you, you can go ahead and do that now. If not, let's talk about what a good system actually looks like. So here's some proven systems for lead gen based on my experience. There might be more, but this is what I've seen really work well after consulting 3,000 plus clients. We have cold outbound, organic audience lists, paid ads, affiliates, and then sponsorships and speaking. So now, word of mouth referrals, I'm not saying that can't be a system, but usually we find it works more in SaaS and tech where the K factor exceeds 1, meaning like for every client you get at least 1.1 or one more clients, right? So like every client you get net refers more clients, right? That gives you that nice viral growth. In online service-based businesses, I've almost never seen at scale a K factor more than 1. I'm not saying it's not possible, but it's very rare. Okay, so I'm sure there's more of these. This is what I've seen most common is the list I gave you. So let's break each of them down, starting with cold outbound. So this is obviously where you were a salesperson is manually reaching out to somebody you don't know, trying to get them interested. So obviously this is going to be through like phone, text, email, LinkedIn, social DM. It's not setters reaching out to leads from your marketing, right? Like leads that are book buyers or opt-ins or webinar opt-ins or anything like that. That's still great, by the way, but that's more of a paid ads process that you're using setters to make better. It's actually an MDR inbound setting process, not a pure outbound setting process. Okay, so with outbound setting, what I recommend is start with cold email on LinkedIn, do it manually at first, and then as you get better at it, you can automate it. Okay, so I'm gonna give you an idea. We had a cold email campaign and division of our company that was doing about 300 grand a month. And so I'm going to share with you basically the exact email that we were using so you can get the right idea of the messaging. So in this message, it said, "Hey, Nina, came across your health coaching business on Facebook and wanted to personally reach out. Do you currently have a sales team that handles your client enrollment?" So this is the first sentence, okay? This sentence is always, besides the question at the end, which I'll explain in a moment, this is always a customized first line, okay? So we would write these customized for every single different client or every single different person that we're reaching out to. And then the rest of the email is a pure template. Okay, so we would just say, "Hey, came across this, saw you on this, really good job on this, wanted to personally reach out." And then the question is, it needs to be different depending on what you're doing, but it's kind of we try to find a question that's an ambiguous question to where we're setting up the problem we solve, but at the same time, it could be an ambiguous question that they maybe think we're interested in their services. So you see how, do you currently have a sales team that handles your enrollment? They don't really know if we're interested, or like that also tees up the problem I'm going to say in the next sentence. So it gets them to keep reading, right? We don't want to mislead them. Like you can easily see how this is actually teeing up the next thing, but it does create some ambiguity to where they don't know it's a sales pitch right away. Then we get into the rest of the email, which is a pure template. Okay, hey, the reason I ask is we were able to go from 250 grand a month to 1.9 million a month in 7 months using a VSL and commission-based appointment setters. We were also able to replicate those results for Beauty Boss, took them from 300 to 460 days. I'll post the rest of the track record below in the PS. So this is basically the case study line. The reason I reached out is we were able to case study using Method, and we were also able to replicate that for case study. I'll put more case studies in the PS. Is this top of mind for you right now? Here's a quick video on how this works. So then quick video would be hyperlinked, and that would go to a VSL, and that just basically explains how the offer works. It's not like a really hard-hitting ads VSL. We do a different one that's a little bit more congruent with the cold email platform, if that makes sense. Like if we're sending a personal email, all right? So it could even just be like a Loom video, but just a basic breakdown that acknowledges, hey, you're probably watching this because one of our team members reached out to you about this. Here's kind of how our offer works. And then CTAs at the end and has a demo link below. So then last sentence says, check this video out and schedule a demo below using that link, or I can actually send you some times if you want to talk to me specifically, Jared, okay? So that's basically how it works. We either CTA by saying, hey, use the link to book, or just reply and send me some times, or reply and I'll send you some times. That's totally fine. So this email destroyed for us. Now the PS, I just list a ton of big name case studies that our company's worked with. If you haven't worked with big names, you could just use basic ones that maybe they haven't heard of, but that got really good results. And you could just say company X, Y, and Z went from blank to blank. And you could use like 5 of those. You could even hyperlink it to like more in-depth, really good interviews as well. But like we just social proof slam them at the very end. All right. So this this email crushed it for us. I mean, we launched our cold email division and went from 0 to 300 grand a month with this really, really quickly. Now, overall outlook in terms of cold outbound, what's crazy about this is it's easy to start, hard to scale, but then it's actually more scalable long-term, which is kind of funny. It's easy to start, hard to scale, but then more scalable long-term. So if you think about scaling paid ads, which we'll talk about later, is very explosive in the beginning, but at scale, you start to get more diminishing returns. Whereas cold email, easy to start, but is slow and hard and just arduous to scale. It's just like a very, you're like just mucking through it. But long term, as you get the engine going, it's still kind of a slow burn, but at the same time, you don't get really the diminishing returns you get from ads. So it's actually, in a long-term perspective, it can be more scalable. That's why a lot of SaaS companies actually, they get to 10 to 20 million a year pretty quickly through inbound. And then a lot of times they bring in outbound to go slightly up market and to scale to 100 million plus, especially in B2B SaaS enterprise, stuff like that. So my advice is, if you're inexperienced with your messaging and offer and you have a little budget, start with cold, scale that to 20, 30, 50 grand a month, reinvest that into ads, because ads is a much faster way to get to 20 million plus. Now, long term, to get true scalable outbound, what I find is you really have to invest in hiring amazing reps and paying salaries, which again is kind of hard for a beginner. So in the beginning phases, I would just kick it off, do it yourself, do it manual, then do kind of the automated approach, get it to 20 to 50 grand a month, and then pivot to ads. Okay, but then long term, you can hire really good salespeople to come in and do this. It's just you got to pay them a big 6-figure salary plus commission. So it's kind of a revisit later thing. But that's why I was saying after 10 to 20 million-ish, keep scaling the ads, of course, but start slowly reinvesting in building this team, because it has much less diminishing returns and allows you to go up market more at scale. Okay, so now let's move on to organic audience and lists. So this is where you have either owned media, which is your email or SMS list, or even direct mail for that matter, or earned media, which is like your audience on social, and then you're obviously call to action into that audience to book calls or, get interested in your services. Now, this is only an optimal selling system if you have an abundance of leads and the leads and the audience growth outpaces your conversion mechanism, okay? So oftentimes what I find is most clients, even if they have pretty big social media followings, like they get 50,000 YouTube or views per YouTube video, oftentimes if their sales team scales, they'll break past the amount of leads they can get from YouTube and they have to do ads later. But there's some brands that are big enough to where that might not happen for a while, or the channel growth and the views growth and the leads growth will just consistently outpace the sales team, and then you really have a system. So again, remember, it's got to be a system where inputs is outputs. And in this case, the inputs is you produce a video, it gets views, you make a certain amount of call to actions in your social media platforms, and from those call to actions, you get a certain amount of outputs in the form of people interested in your services. Okay, so that's how it has to look. It can't look like, well, I kind of dabble with social media a little bit on Instagram and YouTube, and I get some calls, but it's like if you could have just double your sales team from this, it's probably not a system. Okay, so the tandem though works really well to where you do have some social approach and then you do ads, and that's because naturally when you run ads, the pixel is so good it will find the people who are naturally attracted to your organic anyways. Okay, so here's kind of the outlook I have for this. If you're brand new, I would not recommend relying on this, but I'd recommend starting to do it and investing in it because it's such a long tail payoff. So organic can explode. It just takes a while. All right. So start with ads and cold, but also push content out so you're like visible out there. And eventually it's either maybe if you go super viral, it could surpass your ads and cold outbound and it could be your own system. Or at the very least, it's going to be a great supplement and it'll actually make your ads work much better. Because the real beauty is with big brands that I work with, if they run ads, if they deliver an ad, even though it's cold traffic, it might be that person's 9th impression of seeing that person's face or that brand. So the ads work phenomenally better. Okay, so that's really where content just crushes, is this kind of tandem approach. I call it like the natural retargeting when you have it both combined with ads and content. Okay, so now let's move on to the big daddy. We got ads, right? So you're playing a platform, Facebook, YouTube, et cetera, to run ads. So I've worked with 3,000 plus clients. I'm just going to be honest. 99% of my 7-figure, 8-figure, and even my 9-figure clients have gotten there through ads. Okay. So this is kind of the gold standard. And I'm not saying it's my favorite. There's a lot of downsides of ads. But if you just look at what is the most proven practical way to get to 7, 8, 9 figures with online service-based businesses, ads takes the cake. Okay. Now, I could make a whole video about this. There's a bazillion funnels that you can do. I'm going to walk you through one that took me from 100 grand a month to 2.5 million a month. Okay. So here was the ad. I've literally just screenshotted it in my ad account. So the ad flow here is we call out the audience and we immediately state the offer. So I said, coaches and marketing agencies will place appointment setters in your business or you don't pay, right? Then after that, what you can't see in this because the ad is very long, I do a 3-result explanation. So I'm like, basically in our company, we guarantee 3 key results. We'll find you great people. We'll help you train them up in the KPI. We'll help you systematize sales management so you can remove yourself from it. And then I restate the offer and the guarantee. And if, for whatever reason, those people don't work out, you don't pay. Right? Then there's the results and proof. So after that, what I'll go into is why can I make such a big, bold promise? Hammer with results. And then I'll do a call to action. Okay. The video script and the written script is very the same. And I modeled this from a combination. If you want to go deeper on how to make ads like this, you can check out Alex Becker's business channel and also Joel Orway. They're kind of the 2 pioneers that I really got this strategy from, so to speak. So if you really want to go deeper, check them out. Now, this would go to the ugliest landing page of all time. I don't know why. I could never beat this page. I'm just being honest. It's super disgustingly ugly, but I could just never beat the conversions of it. So it is what it is. So basically, in the eyebrow, we would just call out the audience. For this audience only at the time, we were only working with coaches, courses, and marketing agencies. So we said these people only. Now we work with a much broader audience, but still at this time, it was only those people. Then I would state the offer, give me 7 days, blah, 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 offer. And then below, I have the qualifier again. It's like, if you're not this person, leave this page now. And then the get started was basically a pop-up to our application, which looks like this. So what we found converted better is making that a pop-up. And then we have more qualification here. It's like, again, if you're not this person, leave this page now. And then we have setters hit all these leads because a lot of people are going to come in and not book. Right? So a big part of making this work is obviously having the setters. Next, it goes to the VSL. This is very similar to the ad, honestly. The headline is just the offer. Then the flow is, again, we state the offer in the first sentence, the 3-result explanation, we hammer them with results, we make a CTA. So that's basically almost the same exact as the ad. The only thing I add to the VSL is I say, if you want to know more about why this works so well, I'm going to tell you the single biggest reason why, or I'm going to tell you the 3 biggest reasons why, the 2 biggest reasons why, and then I go into why we're unique, different, superior than the common other alternatives out there, doing it yourself, etc. Then I'll restate some results, then we'll do a call to action, and then basically below this video, you can't see it, but there's just an apply button. That's, again, a pop-up to a type form. They do the type form, redirects to book a call, they pick a time, redirects to a thank you page showing them next steps. So pretty basic stuff. That's what really helped me scale from 100 grand a month to 2.5 million a month in my sales recruiting business. So moving on from ads, we have affiliates. Okay, now I have not done this personally, but here's what I've observed from clients who have done this successfully. So what's really cool about this model is instead of acquiring clients, you're using the methods we already talked about to acquire affiliates. Okay, so I'll give you some examples. Let's say Hyros wanted to use this strategy, okay, an affiliate strategy. They could use cold outbound, which is kind of the method of acquisition, to reach out to agencies within their target market, offer large affiliate commissions, and show benefits of how they can actually help them make more money with Hyros, which Hyros is an ad tracking platform, so you can make more ROI from your ads. Plus, they could kind of do special things for these agencies, like they could put them in a program, a community events mastermind, something like that. Like, so for instance, with Alan, I know Alex Ramosi, I think that for affiliates that sold Alan, he let them in kind of a group coaching program where he would coach them for free. So that gave them even more incentive to be able to use Alan. Okay. So again, they're using cold outbound. They're creating relationships with the agencies. They're showing the agencies, hey, if you use it for your clients, I know you do rev share with your clients, you're going to be able to make more money. Your clients can make more money, and we'll give you a really large affiliate commission on this for every client that you bring on. And then also we'll do these special bonuses. Okay. Pretty basic example, extremely effective though. Okay. Let's say you had a stem cell clinic that did a hair product. Okay. So like, let's say you did stem cells for hair loss. I was thinking about doing this for a client. We actually never did it, but this is the strategy I created. You could run ads so again, this is a regrow your hair with stem cells, for instance. You could run ads to barbers. You could communicate the benefit to the barbers, which basically here, the average barber makes 40 to 60 grand a year, and they're doing a lot of work for that 40 to 60 grand a year. With a high ticket product like stem cells for hair loss, you could pay them 10 to 20% commission. If the average person can send you 1 to 2 referrals a month, that's it, that close, they could actually 1.5x to 2x their income because there's such big affiliate commissions on those. And they're doing 15 heads a day, so they can easily find people who are actually in early onset hair loss who are perfect for this product, okay? So you could run after them, communicate what I just said, basically that benefit, have them pay a refundable setup fee, like 1 to 2 grand, just to liquidate your ads, completely refundable, and in fact, you could actually just refund that as their first affiliate commission. Then you would onboard them, give them tons of support, how to succeed. And then what's nice is you're stacking affiliates. So the beauty of this model is, in any other model, you get a bunch of sales, and then next month you start from zero, and you got to get more sales. With this model, you might get 5 affiliates, but then the next month, instead of starting at 0, you start at 5 affiliates, and now you're building to 10 affiliates. And then the next month, you start at 10 affiliates. So this model stacks. So it's a much more compounding model than the other acquisition models. Doesn't mean it's necessarily superior, but if you can really pull it off, this is why this can crush so hard, and so many companies have done stuff like this. So the last one I want to talk about, and I'm still validating this channel, to be completely candid, I would not say I've mastered it whatsoever, is being a sponsor and speaking at events. Okay, so I've done a lot of speaking, and I've had a lot of experiences of what works and doesn't work. What doesn't work is speaking and not sponsoring, and what also doesn't work is sponsoring and not speaking. Now, they can work, it's just very hit and miss. To get predictability, you have to do both. So here's kind of our work in progress strategy. I have 2 clients who've scaled this to 8 figures, and that's kind of who I've been learning from, is through kind of the clients. But we're still learning, but I want to share with you what we're learning. So what we're doing is finding events that we can 4x our ROI on sponsorship fees on upfront cash. So on our day 1 cash collected, we predict based on how many people are going to be there, how many sales calls we're going to get, etc., that we'll be able to do a 4x. The audience must be right. That's kind of obvious. Just use common sense. And then we go for a minimum 10-minute speaking slot. Obviously, we want 60 minutes, but if they can't give us 10 minutes, we won't do it, period, hard line. Then another hard line is we have to bring 3 to 4 members of our team. That's usually pretty easy to do. Then I give a valuable talk, give away a free session and resources at the end, and they have to come to the booth for the resource. So like what we're doing is like a booklet that's kind of like a sales playbook manual. They have to come to the booth to be able to get that. Then once they're at the booth, after my talk, we can book a bunch of calls at the booth and schedule people for those pre-sessions. And then also for the rest of the time, the team's kind of in hand-to-hand combat networking to book more sessions. But ideally, you could speak as early as possible so you kind of have the authority, and then you kind of clean up through the rest of the event. So if you do this right, and we're kind of in the stage where we've nailed some of these, others we've bombed, and I shouldn't say bomb, but like not hit our KPIs. So, but if you nail this and you can get predictability with it, it can actually become an optimal selling system where more inputs, sponsorships and speaking is more outputs, and you can do it with speakers of your company and not actually you. So like the 2 people I know who do this really well, the founder doesn't even speak. It's actually somebody from the company, right? So it's something that can work as well. So that's it for this video, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. We'll see you in the next video.